My brother's voice sliced through the ballroom like a sharp blade. Everyone, this is my smelly sister. No real job, no future, just a laborer who works with her hands. About 200 people in expensive suits turned to stare at me. Champagne glasses froze in midair. Someone even gasped. I stood there in my best jeans and the silk blouse I bought just for this night. My face burned as quiet laughter spread around the room. Gregory lifted his glass with a smug smile. My own brother, mocking me at his big merger party, right in front of all the people who mattered to him. And the worst part. My mother smiled. Not a warm smile, just that tight little one she always gives when Gregory puts me down. Like she agreed but didn't want to say it out loud. Let me rewind for a moment. My name is Susie Fowle. I'm 34 years old. And according to my family, I'm the failure who digs ditches for a living. Here's what they don't know. I own Fowle in Company Landscape Architecture. We have 47 employees working across 3 states. Last year, we made $11 million in revenue. This year, we landed a $4.2 million contract with the city for the downtown riverfront restoration. My company has been featured twice in Architectural Digest. We also won a National Design Award for restoring Morrison Park. But sure, according to them, I'm just the dirty sister who plays in the dirt. I never told my family any of this. Not about the money. Not about the awards. Not even about the fact that my weekly payroll alone is $47,000. I guess I foolishly believed they would see my worth without a price tag attached. That maybe they would love me as a daughter and sister first. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Gregory is 38, 4 years older than me. Older than me and about 400 times more arrogant. He works in finance, which in our family basically means he can do no wrong. Mom has called him her little success story ever since he got his first internship at 22. Every Thanksgiving. Every Christmas. Even random phone calls on a Tuesday somehow turn into updates about Gregory's latest promotion, Gregory's new car, or Gregory's powerful clients. And me. Oh, Susie is still doing her little gardening thing. It's not gardening, Mom. I've explained that at least 7,000 times. I'm a licensed landscape architect. I design outdoor spaces, manage construction projects, and run a company with heavy equipment worth more than Gregory's house. That's nice, honey, she says, but when are you going to get a real job? You know, something indoors where you don't get all dirty. I stopped explaining years ago. Some arguments just aren't worth the energy. Or at least, that's what I told myself. 3 weeks before his big merger party, Gregory called me. The fact that he wanted me there should have been my first warning sign. Gregory never wants me around. I'm the embarrassing family member he pretends doesn't exist at his fancy networking events. His exact words are burned into my memory. Listen, Susie, this night is really important to me. There will be serious people there. So maybe don't talk too much about your ditch-digging business, okay? I don't need you embarrassing me. I should have said no. I should have told him exactly what he could do with his invitation. But here's my biggest weakness, I actually love my brother. Somewhere under all that arrogance is the kid I built blanket forts with. The teenager who taught me how to drive. The person I believed would always stand up for me. So I said yes, because I'm, apparently someone who enjoys suffering. I spent 3 full days choosing the right outfit. Not too fancy, or Gregory would accuse me of trying too hard. Not too casual, or I'd be the messy sister who couldn't dress properly. I finally chose dark jeans, a cream-colored silk blouse, and the only pair of heels I own that don't make me want to cry after 20 minutes. When I stepped into the ballroom, I actually felt hopeful. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe Gregory would introduce me with respect. Maybe I could talk to normal people who didn't already think I was worthless. Then I saw the venue, and I nearly laughed. The Grand Metropolitan Hotel. Not just any hotel, the newly renovated Grand Metropolitan Hotel, complete with its award-winning outdoor terrace, sustainable garden design, and custom water features. I knew this place very well. My company designed and built the entire project. We finished it 14 months ago. There's a bronze plaque by the fountain with our company name on it, Fowle & Company, right there in the lobby. My brother had walked past it without even noticing. I grabbed a glass of champagne and searched for a quiet corner. That's when I saw my mother make her dramatic entrance, moving straight toward Gregory like a moth drawn to a flame. She hugged him for a full 30 seconds. When she finally noticed me, I got a quick wave and a look that clearly said, "Don't cause trouble tonight." "Hi, Mom. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. My business is growing fast. I just hired 3 new project managers. But yes, let's definitely spend more time talking about Gregory's suit." I was planning my escape when someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around, and there he was. Todd Brennan. My ex-boyfriend. The man who broke up with me 8 years ago because I was, in his words, going nowhere with that lawn mowing thing of yours. The man who told me I had no ambition and would never become anything. Todd had gotten a hair transplant since the last time I saw him. It looked like someone glued a small, scared animal to his forehead, but somehow I was still the one who had let myself go. "Susie," he said, smiling like we were old friends instead of exes who hadn't spoken in almost 10 years. "Wow, you look the same." "Thank you, Todd. You look different. Very different. Like a completely new hairline." He didn't catch the sarcasm. He never did. Turns out, Todd was one of Gregory's potential investors. Of course he was. Because this night clearly wasn't painful enough already. Before I could escape to literally anywhere else, Gregory tapped his glass and called for attention. He wrapped an arm around me and pulled me closer. That wide, fake smile was glued to his face. And then he said it. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my family. This is my beautiful wife, Vanessa. My wonderful mother, Diane. And this is my stinky sister. No real job, no future, just a manual laborer." The room exploded with laughter. My mother smiled. Todd laughed so hard he sprayed champagne through his nose, which was the only moment of this night that brought me any satisfaction. I stood there frozen, wondering how I had spent 34 years loving people who couldn't even pretend to respect me. But here's the truth about being underestimated your whole life. You learn to observe. You learn to wait. And you start noticing things other people miss. Like how Gregory kept checking his phone, trying to hide his panic. How his smile never fully reached his eyes. How he drank 3 glasses of champagne in less than 20 minutes. Something was wrong. And one older man standing quietly in the corner noticed it too. He wasn't laughing at Gregory's joke. He was watching my brother with sharp focus, like a hawk watching its target. Our eyes met across the room. He lifted his glass toward me just slightly. I had no idea who he was yet, but I was about to find out. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I see everything. Thank you so much for your support. Now, where was I? Right, standing in the middle of my personal nightmare. While 200 strangers laughed at me, the party moved on like nothing had happened. Because to them, nothing had. Gregory's little joke was already forgotten. Just another moment of entertainment for powerful people. But I could still feel it sitting heavy in my chest, that familiar feeling of being the family disappointment. That's when Vanessa appeared beside me, dressed head to toe in designer clothes, like a vampire drawn to weakness. My sister-in-law had mastered the art of giving compliments that were actually insults. "Oh, Susie," she said sweetly, slowly looking me up and down. "Couldn't find anything nicer to wear. I mean, it's fine for you. Very practical." Vanessa was wearing a dress that probably cost more than my first truck. Her blonde hair was styled in one of those complicated updos that takes 3 hours and a professional team. She looked like she stepped out of a magazine, one titled Women Who Married for Money Monthly. "Thanks, Vanessa," I said. "I love your dress. Very tight." She couldn't tell if I was being insulted or praised. Vanessa never could figure me out, which I consider one of my greatest achievements. The next hour was a lesson in social torture. Todd kept appearing everywhere I went, making condescending comments about how I should really think about changing careers before it was too late. My mother trapped me twice just to remind me that Gregory was nervous and that I should be supportive instead of hiding in corners. And Gregory himself strutted around the room like a peacock who had just discovered the secret to unlimited confidence. But I kept watching. And I kept noticing things. Gregory's investor presentation looked impressive on the surface, but it was thin underneath. Lots of big promises about growth and opportunity. Very few real numbers. The executives from the company he was merging with looked sharp and confident, but they kept exchanging looks every time Gregory spoke. The kind of looks that say, "Are you hearing this too? I know business. You don't build a $12 million company without learning how to read people." And this room was reading Gregory as someone trying far too hard to sell himself. That's when I saw them. My father was sitting by the window, looking smaller than I remembered. When did he get so thin? He was 72, but he had always seemed strong, solid, almost timeless, the way fathers are supposed to be. Now he looked tired. Lost. His suit hung on him like it belonged to someone else. Mom stood over him, talking in that sharp whisper she uses when she's irritated. Dad nodded along, barely responding. I started walking toward them, but Gregory stepped in front of me. "Hey, not now," he snapped. "Dad's fine. Don't cause a scene." "I'm not causing a scene. I just want to say hi to our father." "Later," he said. "Right now, I need you to mingle. Todd thinks you might be useful for some of his lower-level clients. Small landscaping jobs, that kind of thing. It would be good for you to finally have something on your resume." "I own a company, Gregory. I have a resume. It has real things on it." He waved his hand like it didn't matter. "You know what I mean. Real experience. Don't be difficult." I let him guide me away because I was too shocked to argue. Small landscaping jobs. Lower-tier clients. My company had just completed a project at the governor's mansion. But sure, let's start small. Todd was waiting, wearing that fake smile stretched over his new hairline. He launched into a long speech about his investment philosophy while I silently calculated how many of his portfolios I could buy outright. The answer was most of them. "You know, Susie," he said, leaning closer like he was sharing wisdom, "I always knew you had potential. You just needed direction. If you'd stayed with me, I could have helped you become something." "I became something without you, Todd," I said. "That's kind of the point." He laughed, like I'd told a joke. "That was always your problem. You never understood what you could achieve with the right guidance." I was seconds away from telling him exactly where he could put his guidance when Vanessa's voice rose above the noise. She was standing near the bar with a group of women, and she wasn't trying to be quiet. "Oh, Susie," she said sweetly. "She's nice. Really. Just a little simple. She digs holes for a living. I keep telling Gregory he should help her find a real career, but you know how family is. You don't get to choose them." The women laughed. Polite, social laughter, the kind that agrees without fully saying it. My mother was standing with them. She didn't laugh. But she didn't defend me either. She simply sipped her wine and stared at the ceiling like it was the most fascinating architecture she'd ever seen. Something inside me cracked. Not shattered, I've had too much practice for that. Just cracked. Like ice right before it gives way. I needed air. I slipped out onto the terrace. My terrace. The one my company designed and built. The evening air was cool, and the scent of jasmine filled the air from the raised beds we had planted. Everything out here was my work, my vision, my success. And no one inside had any idea. That's when the older man from earlier stepped onto the terrace. He was tall, maybe in his late 60s, with silver hair and that relaxed, expensive style that says, "I've already made it." His watch probably cost more than what I earned in my first 3 years of business. "Beautiful work out here," he said, nodding toward the garden beds. "Especially the water feature. Very refined design." "Thank you," I replied. He smiled knowingly. "You designed this, didn't you? This terrace." I recognized the style from Morrison Park. I blinked. "How do you know about Morrison Park?" "Because I read," he said simply. "And because your project won a National Design Award last year. There was a great article in Architectural Digest." He held out his hand. "Susie Fowle. founder of Fowl and Company. I shook his hand, still trying to process what was happening. I'm sorry, should I know you? Probably not, he said with a soft laugh. I'm retired now. Spent 40 years in investment banking. His eyes shifted toward the ballroom. I know your brother's type. He chuckled once, then added, and I know his company. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Warren glanced back through the glass doors, where Gregory was smiling too hard and working the room like nothing was wrong. Your brother is in serious trouble, Warren said quietly. His company is under federal investigation. Securities fraud. I felt the ground tilt beneath my feet. The merger he's celebrating tonight isn't a promotion, Warren continued. It's an escape plan. He's trying to get out before everything becomes public. That's not possible, I whispered. Gregory is the golden child. The success story. Warren's expression stayed calm but firm. The investigation has been going on for 8 months. I still have friends in the industry. The firm he's joining is basically paying for his silence, but they don't know what I know. He paused. And I'm guessing they don't know what you know either. What I know? I asked. Warren nodded toward the ballroom, toward my father still sitting alone by the window. Your father looks worried. Confused. Has Gregory been handling his finances? The crack inside me spread wider. How did you know that? I didn't, Warren said honestly. But I've seen this pattern before. When people get desperate, they take from the ones who trust them the most. I stared at my father through the glass. Dad had mentioned money being tight lately. I'd assumed it was the economy. Maybe a few bad investments. But what if it was something much worse? Warren handed me his business card. You should look into this quietly. And if you find what I think you'll find, you need to understand something. Your brother's house of cards is about to fall. The only question is who gets crushed when it does. Then he walked away. I was left standing on my own terrace, surrounded by my own work, with the sudden and terrifying realization that everything I thought I knew about my family might be wrong. Gregory wasn't the success story. He was the con artist. And my father might be his victim. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Warren Beckford's card sitting on my nightstand like a ticking bomb. Federal investigation. Securities fraud. The words echoed in my head like distant thunder. Part of me wanted to believe it wasn't true. Gregory was arrogant. Yes. Dismissive. Absolutely. A world-class jerk who had humiliated me in front of 200 people, without question. But a criminal. That felt like a step too far. Even for him. Then I remembered my father's face at the party. The confusion. The way his suit hung too, loose. And the way Mom kept snapping at him, like he was a child who couldn't be trusted to behave. I've always trusted my instincts. You don't survive in construction without learning how to listen to your gut. When a contractor lies about materials, you feel it. When a client hides budget problems, you sense it. When something is wrong, your body knows before your mind does. And my body was screaming that something was very, very wrong. At 6 a.m, I gave up on sleep and did what I always do when I need clarity. I went to a job site. We were installing a Japanese garden for a tech executive in the suburbs. Watching my crew work always calms me. I sat in my truck, a 10-year-old Chevy Silverado with 200,000 miles on it and a dent in the tailgate from the day my foreman backed into a boulder. I love that truck. It's paid off. It runs perfectly. And it doesn't care how much money I make, unlike certain family members I could name. As the sun rose over the construction site, I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth. First, I called Warren Beckford. He answered on the second ring, which told me he'd been expecting my call. I asked him to tell me everything he could about the investigation into Gregory's company. We talked for 45 minutes. Warren was careful. He only shared what was technically public information or common knowledge in financial circles, but it was enough. Gregory's firm had been manipulating their books for years. Inflating profits. Hiding losses. Moving money around to cover gaps. The SEC had been building a case for almost a year. Gregory wasn't just going to lose his job. He was facing possible criminal charges. But Warren also admitted that he didn't know everything. The family side of things, the personal finances, that was outside his reach. But I know the pattern, Susie, Warren said. When men like your brother feel pressure, they look for lifeboats. And those lifeboats usually belong to people who trust them. People like your father. I thanked Warren and ended the call. Then I sat in my truck for another 20 minutes, watching my crew carefully move boulders into place, thinking about what I needed to do next. Here's something my family never understood about me. I didn't build a $12 million company by accident. I built it by being careful, patient, and extremely thorough. When I take on a project, I plan every detail. When there's a problem, I gather information before reacting. And when I make a decision, I make sure I have proof to support it. Gregory had spent his entire life underestimating me. To him, I was the dumb sister who got lucky with a small business. He had no idea what was coming. Step 1 was gathering information. That afternoon, I called my dad and kept my voice relaxed. Hey, Dad. Just checking in. How are things? At first, the conversation was normal. He talked about his garden. Dad had always loved working in the yard, probably where I got my own love for plants and growing things. But when I casually asked about his visit to the financial advisor last month, his tone changed. Oh, Gregory's handling all of that now, he said. He said it would be easier if he managed everything together. Something about better returns. I kept my voice calm, even though warning bells were ringing in my head. That's nice of him. So, Gregory has access to your accounts. Yes, Dad said, like it was no big deal at all. He has power of attorney. Your mother insisted. She said I'm getting too old to deal with complicated things. Power of attorney. My 38-year-old brother had, merging into. They were a solid company, successful, respected, and known for being extremely careful about who they partnered with. They ran deep background checks, detailed financial audits, and serious due diligence. Which meant one of two things. Either they hadn't finished looking into Gregory yet, or someone had fed them incomplete information. Warren had mentioned he still had contacts in the industry. I started to wonder how much influence a retired investment banker really had. 3 days after the party, I drove to my parents' house. Not to accuse anyone. I wasn't ready for that. I needed proof first. I just wanted to see my father with my own eyes. What I saw made my blood turn cold. Dad was worse than he'd looked at the party. He seemed confused about simple things. What day it was, whether he'd eaten lunch. Mom answered questions for him before he could speak, talking over him like he wasn't even there. When Mom went into the kitchen, I managed to get Dad alone for a few minutes. I asked him directly about his finances. His eyes went distant. I don't know, honey. Gregory says everything's fine. He's taking care of it. Do you know how much money is in your retirement account, Dad? He couldn't answer. He didn't know. He didn't even know which bank his accounts were with anymore. Gregory handles everything, he repeated, like he was reassuring himself. Gregory knows what he's doing. I left my parents' house that day with tears in my eyes and anger burning in my chest. My brother had taken advantage of our father's trust, his aging mind, his belief that family would never hurt him. Gregory had built his career by looking smart while other people did the real work. Now, he was building his escape plan using our father's life savings. 2 weeks later, Frank Moretti called with his report. The damage was far worse than I'd imagined. Over the past 2 years, Gregory had moved $340,000 from Dad's accounts into his own. He had taken out a loan against the house without Dad fully understanding what he was signing. He had even cashed out a life insurance policy that was meant to protect Mom if anything happened to Dad. In total, he had stolen more than $500,000. My father had worked for 40 years as an electrician. He saved carefully, lived simply, and built a retirement fund meant to support him and Mom in their final years. And Gregory had taken almost all of it. I sat in my office with Frank's report in my hands, staring out at the company I had built from nothing. 47 employees depended on me. Millions of dollars in contracts. A reputation earned through sweat, discipline, and thousands of hours of real work. Gregory had never worked like that a single day in his life. He had only taken, and taken, and taken. But his taking was about to end. I made 3 phone calls. First, I called Rachel. Then I called Warren. Then I called a man I'd met 3 years earlier, when my company handled the landscaping for the federal building downtown. Jerome Williams, an agent in the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Gregory always thought he was the smartest person in our family. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The next 3 weeks were the most focused of my life. And that says a lot, because I once managed 17 construction projects at the same time during a supply chain crisis. I turned my home office into what I called my war room. Frank Moretti's financial report, bank statements, property records, a detailed timeline of every suspicious transaction Gregory had made. I covered an entire wall with documents and sticky notes, like some kind of revenge-themed Pinterest board. My cat, Biscuit, watched all of this with deep concern about my mental health. She kept sitting on the most important papers and meowing like she was trying to stop me from doing something drastic. But Biscuit doesn't understand complex financial fraud, so I chose to ignore her advice. Jerome Williams from the FBI was far more helpful, though much less cuddly. When I explained everything I'd discovered, there was a long silence on the phone. "Miss Fowle," he finally said, "you understand that what you're describing is a separate crime from what we're already investigating. Securities fraud is one thing. But stealing from a 72-year-old man with declining mental capacity, that's elder financial abuse." Jerome asked me to send him everything. Frank's report, bank statements, property liens, all of it. He promised to review it personally and get back to me within a week. 6 days later, he called. "We're very interested in moving forward," he said. "The elder abuse charges would be handled at the state level, but because they overlap with our federal case, we can coordinate." Then his tone shifted. "But we need to be careful. Your brother is already a person of interest. If he senses danger and runs, we lose everything. What do you need from me?" I asked. Jerome explained that the FBI had been building a case against Gregory's company for months. They already had proof of securities fraud, fake financial reports, and stolen client funds. Gregory wasn't the mastermind, that was his boss, but he was deeply involved and facing serious charges. The real issue was timing. They wanted to arrest everyone at once. No warning. No chance to destroy evidence. No opportunity to flee. My evidence about what Gregory had done to Dad added a powerful new layer to the case. But it also complicated everything. Things even more complicated. "We need a controlled setting," Jerome said. "Somewhere we know he'll be. Somewhere we can work with local authorities." That's when I remembered something Gregory had announced at the party. He was planning a family dinner at a high-end restaurant the following month. A celebration of his merger, with his new business partners attending. "What if I told you exactly where he'll be?" I asked. "On a specific night. Surrounded by all the people he's desperate to impress." Jerome was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Tell me more." For the next 2 weeks, I became the most supportive sister on the planet. I called Gregory to congratulate him on the merger. I sent Vanessa flowers with a sweet note about how happy I was for them. I even called my mother and suggested a proper family celebration for Gregory's success. Mom was suspicious at first. "Since when do you care about Gregory's career?" "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her, almost choking on my own words. "About being more supportive. About appreciating what Gregory has achieved. I want to do better." Mom practically melted through the phone. "Oh, Susie, that's so mature of you. Gregory will be thrilled." And he was. So thrilled, in fact, that he called me himself, which hadn't happened in almost 3 years. "Susie, this is great," he said. "Really great. I'm glad you're finally coming around. This dinner is important. My new partners will be there. I need the family to make a good impression." "I'll be on my best behavior," I promised. What I didn't tell him was that Warren Beckford would also be there. I had called Warren the day after Jerome and I made our plan. Warren was happy to help. "I've been waiting 40 years to see someone like your brother get what he deserves," he said. "Consider me your plus one." Warren also made a few careful phone calls to his contacts at the firm Gregory was about to join. He didn't tell them everything, just enough to worry them. Just enough to make them start asking questions. Just enough to ensure that when the truth finally came out, they'd be ready to run. The restaurant Gregory chose was called Carmichael's. White tablecloths. Overpriced steaks. The kind of place where the staff silently judges you for ordering chicken. I actually knew the place well. 2 years earlier, I'd done some landscaping consulting for them. The patio garden was my design, done pro bono in exchange for a lifetime discount on their wine list. Life is about making smart investments. I worked closely with Jerome to plan the timing. FBI agents would be inside the restaurant in plain clothes. No drama. No public spectacle. This wasn't a movie. They would wait for my signal. Then they'd calmly approach Gregory and ask him to step outside. Professional. Controlled. Devastating. But before that night arrived, I had one more thing to prepare. I spent an entire weekend with my accountant reviewing my finances. My company was valued at $12 million. My personal savings, investments, and property added another $3 million. By any reasonable standard, I was wealthy. I had never felt wealthy. I still drove my old truck. I still wore work boots most days. I still got dirt under my nails regularly. Money had never been the goal. Building something had always been the goal. Taking raw materials and hard work and turning them into something beautiful. That was what truly mattered. But money was about to matter a great deal, because I was going to use mine to repair everything Gregory had damaged. I set up a trust fund for my father's care. I arranged to pay off the fraudulent lien on his house. I contacted an elder law attorney to establish proper guardianship, making sure no one could ever take advantage of him again. When this was over, Dad would be safe. Mom would be secure. And Gregory would face the consequences of his actions. The night before the dinner, my phone rang. It was Gregory. His voice sounded different, tight, nervous, almost desperate. "Susie, I need to ask you something," he said. "And I need you not to ask questions." "What is it?" "I need to borrow some money. Just $50,000. I'll pay you back within a month. I swear." I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was pounding. 50,000. Gregory, that's a lot of money. I know. But I'm in a tight spot. Some investments didn't work out the way I expected. It's temporary. The merger will fix everything. I just need to get through the next few weeks. He was scared. I could hear it clearly. The golden child was finally realizing his house of cards was starting to shake. I pretended to think about it. "That's really a lot, Gregory. I'm not sure I have that kind of cash just sitting around." "Come on, Susie," he said. "I know you've done okay with your little business. You must have something saved." Your little business. Even while begging me for money, he couldn't stop talking down to me. "Let me think about it," I said. "We can talk more at dinner tomorrow." He thanked me again and again, which was new. Gregory had never thanked me for anything in his life. I ended the call and sat alone in the dark living room. Biscuit was curled up on my lap, purring softly. Tomorrow night, everything would change. Tomorrow, everything would change. Gregory thought he was getting a warm family dinner and a $50,000 loan from his stinky sister. What he was really getting was the end of everything he had built on lies. I scratched Biscuit behind the ears. "You know what, Cat? Revenge really is best served at a restaurant with a lifetime wine discount." Biscuit didn't reply. She's more of a listener than a talker. Carmichael's looked stunning that night. Soft lighting. Fresh flowers on every table. The low hum of expensive conversations filling the room. I wore my best dress, a simple navy blue one I'd bought 2 years ago for an industry awards event. Heels that didn't hurt. Real jewelry. Gregory didn't even notice. "Susie, there you are," he said when I walked in, already scanning the room for someone more important. You look fine. Listen, have you thought about what we talked about? We'll talk later, I said calmly. After dinner. Let's not make tonight about money. He looked tense, almost shaking with impatience, but forced a smile. Right. Family first. The private dining room was already filling up. Gregory's new business partners from the merger, two perfectly polished executives named Richard and Sandra, who looked like they'd been designed in a lab for maximum corporate blandness. Vanessa sparkled in a dress that probably cost more than my first year of business revenue. Mom sat tall, calm, and quietly judgmental. Dad looked confused, but happy to be included. And Todd was there too. Of course he was. Still following Gregory around. Still wearing that unfortunate hair transplant. Still convinced he was the smartest person in any room. He made a beeline straight for me. Susie, wow, he said, smiling wide as he approached. You clean up nice, Todd said. I almost didn't recognize you without the dirt. Thanks, Todd, I replied. I almost didn't recognize you with the hair. He touched his head nervously. It's a new treatment. Very cutting edge. It's definitely something, I said. If you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Your support truly means everything to me, and it helps these stories reach more people. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, back to the moment I'd been waiting for. Warren Beckford arrived exactly on time, looking sharp in a charcoal suit. He shook hands with Richard and Sandra, who clearly recognized him immediately. Their eyes widened. Warren Beckford. Richard said. I didn't realize you'd be here. Warren smiled politely. I'm an old friend of the Fowle family. Susie invited me. Gregory's face shifted through several colors in quick succession. He hadn't known I knew Warren. And he definitely hadn't expected me to invite industry royalty to his dinner. That's great, Gregory said stiffly. The more the merrier. We took our seats. Wine was poured. Appetizers arrived. Gregory stood to make his toast. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began, that familiar smug smile firmly in place. This merger represents everything I've worked for. A new chapter. A chance to prove that hard work and smart decisions always pay off. He gestured around the table. I'm surrounded by the people who matter most. My beautiful wife. My wonderful mother. My new partners, who I know will lead us to incredible success. Then he paused and looked directly at me. And even my sister, who's finally learning to appreciate what real success looks like. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Some of us work with our hands, Gregory continued. Some of us work with our minds. And I've always believed the mind is the more valuable tool. Polite laughter rippled around the table. Mom beamed proudly. Dad looked confused. Vanessa smirked. And Todd actually winked at me, like we were sharing some private joke at my expense. I smiled serenely and took a slow sip of my wine. Gregory continued his self-congratulatory speech for another 5 minutes. His voice was confident, but I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he gestured. Richard and Sandra kept exchanging tight, uneasy glances. Warren watched it all with the calm patience of a man who'd seen this exact performance many times before. Finally, Gregory raised his glass. To the future. To the future, everyone echoed. That's when Warren cleared his throat. Before we drink to that, he said, standing slowly, I think there's something your new partners should see. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table toward Richard and Sandra. Gregory went pale. What is this? He snapped. What are you doing? Warren's voice stayed calm, almost kind. It's the results of a preliminary audit. Something your new partners requested quietly last week, after I suggested they might want to take a closer look at the books. Richard opened the folder. His expression shifted from curiosity to horror in about 3 seconds. Gregory, he said slowly. What is this? These numbers don't match what you showed us. These are old figures, Gregory said quickly, his voice rising. That's a mistake. The current situation is completely different. Sandra leaned in, reading over Richard's shoulder. This shows systematic falsification going back 3 years, she said flatly. There are SEC violations all over this. The room fell silent. Every single eye locked onto Gregory. Then his phone rang. He snatched it up like a drowning man grabbing a life preserver. Hello. Whatever he heard on the other end drained the color from his face. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He slowly lowered the phone, his hand shaking now, badly. What do you mean? Gregory said, his voice cracking. They're at my house. What warrant? He looked up, wild-eyed. And that's when he noticed the 2 people who had quietly entered the private dining room. A man and a woman. Calm. Professional. Dark suits that didn't try to impress anyone, because they didn't have to. Gregory Fowle, the man said evenly, flashing his badge. I'm Agent Jerome Williams with the FBI. We have questions for you regarding financial fraud and the misappropriation of funds. We'd like you to come with us. Gregory's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. This is insane, he said hoarsely. I haven't done anything wrong. The woman stepped forward and produced a document. We also have a warrant related to elder financial abuse, she said. Specifically, the unauthorized transfer of funds from the accounts of Harold Fowle, your father. Dad looked up at the sound of his name. What? He asked softly. What's happening? Mom's face went rigid, like a statue cracking from the inside. Vanessa froze, her champagne glass hovering inches from her lips. Todd stopped breathing altogether. Gregory turned slowly toward me. His eyes burned. You, he hissed. You did this. I stood, smoothing my dress, my hand steady. No, Gregory, I said calmly. You did this. I just made sure everyone finally saw it. I turned to the table. My brother has stolen over $340,000 from our father over the past 2 years, I said. He took out loans against Dad's house without his informed consent. He liquidated a life insurance policy meant to protect our mother. He exploited our father's trust and his declining health to fund his lifestyle while his company collapsed around him. I looked at Richard and Sandra. Your merger would have made you accessories to his fraud. Warren didn't sabotage you, he saved you. Then I looked at my mother. You put Gregory in charge because you thought he was the successful one, I said quietly. You thought I was just the stinky sister with a dirty job and no future. Her lips trembled. She said nothing. Finally, I looked back at Gregory. I own a company valued at $12 million, I said. I employ 47 people. I just signed a $4.2 million municipal contract. I've been featured in Architectural Digest twice. I leaned in slightly. And I still drive a 10-year-old truck because I don't need to steal from my parents to feel important. The room was dead silent. Agent Williams stepped forward again. Mr. Fowle, he said, please stand up and place your hands behind your back. Gregory looked around the table, at his partners, his wife, his mother. No one moved. No one helped. Vanessa finally set her glass down, very carefully, like it might shatter if she didn't. This is a misunderstanding, Gregory said weakly. Mom, tell them. Tell them I was just helping Dad. Mom stared at the tablecloth. Dad looked at me. Susie, he said softly. Is this true? I walked to him and knelt beside his chair. Yes, Dad, I said gently. But it's okay. I fixed it. Your house is safe. Your care is covered. No one can touch your money again. His eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have listened to you. I squeezed his hand. You did now. That's what matters. The agents cuffed Gregory. The sound was quiet, but final. As they led him toward the door, he twisted back toward me, rage and panic twisting his face. You think you've won, he spat. You think this makes you better than me. I met his gaze without flinching. No, Gregory, I said. It makes me free. The door closed behind him. Silverware clinked somewhere in the restaurant. Life resumed. Warren lifted his glass slightly in my direction. To integrity, he said. I raised mine. To accountability. And for the first time in my life, the golden child was gone, and the truth finally had a seat at the table. I won a National Design Award, I said. And I never told you. Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for how much money I make. The room went completely silent. But you didn't, I continued. You mocked me. You ignored me. You embarrassed me. And worst of all, you stole from the man who worked for 40 years to give us a good life. Gregory's face collapsed. Susie, please, he said, his voice breaking. You have to help me. You have to tell them this is all a misunderstanding. Agent Williams stepped forward calmly. Sir, we need you to come with us now. As they led Gregory toward the door, he turned back and looked at me one last time. The confident smile was gone. The golden child was gone. He just looked small, scared, empty. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. But I also felt something else, relief. Because after 34 years, the truth was finally out. Vanessa jumped up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. She pulled out her phone while rushing toward the door. I need a lawyer, she said. And a divorce attorney. Todd sat frozen, his mouth hanging open. He had almost invested his money with Gregory. He had almost ruined his life too. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You really own a $12 million company. Yes, I said. And goodbye, Todd. I walked over to my father and took his hand. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Susie, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I trusted him. I know, Dad, I said softly. This isn't your fault. I'm going to take care of everything now. He squeezed my hand. You were always the good one, he said. I should have seen it. We sat there together while chaos filled the room. My mother was crying. Richard and Sandra were making urgent phone calls. Warren quietly finished his wine, calm and steady, like a man who had watched many powerful people fall before. Outside, life went on, but inside that room, everything had changed forever. Gregory was helped into an unmarked car. No handcuffs. Not yet. But his career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His marriage was finished. And soon, his freedom would be gone too. The stinky sister had won. 1 month later, I stood on a construction site early in the morning, watching my crew finish the final water feature for the downtown riverfront project. The air smelled like fresh soil and new beginnings. My boots were muddy. My hands were dirty. And I had never felt more like myself. Gregory's arrest had made the local news, but I refused every interview request. The federal charges for securities fraud were moving forward, along with the state charges for elder financial abuse. His assets were frozen. His company had completely collapsed. The merger was dead. Vanessa filed for divorce just 48 hours after the dinner. I heard she was already dating one of her divorce attorneys. Some people really do land on their feet. Todd called me twice. He left long, awkward voicemails about how he had always believed in me and how maybe we could get coffee sometime. I deleted both messages without replying. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some are worth watching burn, from a safe distance, with a good glass of wine. The money Gregory stole from my father was being recovered through the courts, but I didn't wait. I paid off the fake loan on my parents' house immediately. I set up a trust fund for Dad's care using my own money. I hired a part-time caregiver to help Mom manage his daily needs. Dad's memory problems were real, but he started doing better once the stress was gone. Most days, he worked in his garden, tending to his tomato plants. Sometimes he called me just to talk about nothing at all. Those calls were the best part of my day. Those calls became the best part of my week. Mom and I had a difficult conversation a few days after the dinner. She didn't apologize. That's never really been her way. But she did say something I didn't expect. I never understood what you did, she admitted. It looked like you were just playing in the dirt. Gregory explained things in ways I could understand. Numbers, titles, things that sounded important. She stopped for a moment, then said quietly, I should have asked you more questions. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning. Warren Beckford and I started having lunch once a week. He became something like a mentor, offering advice, sharing stories, and introducing me to people who could help Fowl and Company grow even more. He told me that watching Gregory's downfall was the most entertaining thing he'd experienced since retiring. Warren has a dark sense of humor. I like that about him. My phone buzzed. A message from my foreman: the water feature is ready for final testing. I walked over to the control panel and flipped the switch. Water shot into the air in perfect arcs, catching the morning sunlight and forming tiny rainbows in the mist. The crew cheered. A few of them clapped me on the back. This was what I had built. Not just fountains and gardens, but a company full of people who trusted me. Projects that would last for decades. Beauty created from raw materials, hard work, and stubborn determination. Gregory had spent his career moving money around spreadsheets, creating nothing, building nothing, helping no one. In the end, he lost everything. I spent my career with dirt under my fingernails, building spaces that made people happy, creating something real. And in the end, I had everything that truly mattered. My phone rang again. A new client. They wanted to talk about a $3 million project. I smiled and answered the call. A commercial project, they said. I looked down at my muddy boots, my calloused hands, my crew celebrating another successful installation. Some people spend so much time looking down on others that they never notice they're standing on quicksand. I lifted the phone and smiled. "This is Susie Fowl," I said. "How can I help you?" Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now, and don't miss the best part. You're going to love it. See you in the next one.